Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. I'm Eric Kane alongside Grant Ramey and Brent Hubbs. Got a lot of questions to get into, a lot on the basketball, some on spring football, and a couple on baseball as well. So let's dive into it. We'll start with Brandon_SV. With most of the roster graduating, do you think Barnes can go more aggressive in the portal since there is less chemistry to disrupt from returning players?
He doesn't have a choice but to go aggressive in the portal. Like, that's the only that's the only realistic option to bring in impact players, and you have to fill this roster with guys that are impact players that help you from day one because of how much you have to replace in the backcourt, basically everything from scratch just about. Scheduled to return guys in the post, so that's a good starting place. But just based on the numbers, I mean, they went into this thing with two open scholarships. They've got 6 seniors, I believe, is the count. Because of the guys you're losing, Zakai Ziegler, Jordan Gainey, Igor, all those guys, Chaz, like, you have to go aggressive in the portal. That's why they're so aggressive after Jacoby Gillespie. That's why they're so aggressive after Isaac McNeely. Even before the season ended, they were aggressive on that front. So that's the only option.
Grant, let me ask you this, and I know we got a bunch of questions to get to, so I don't want to do 12 parts on each question, but I do want to ask you this. Do you think the chemistry thing is a little less of a issue now for not just Tennessee, but teams around the country than it was 3 years ago, because there's a lot more money being thrown around and everybody's getting a slice of pie? That it's the idea of keeping everybody somewhat on an equal salary standing is just not realistic, right? So is the chemistry thing a little less of a concern in your mind with basketball teams than maybe it was when this first came out?
I think it's only a concern if you're bad at it, to be honest. Like Rick and this staff, even before NIL and before all this stuff, even before everything changed a few years ago, they're really good at recruiting to fit a culture and recruiting guys that were going to fit in where they were. And obviously money changes things and who's getting what and all this stuff. That is what it is. But I think they've done a good job of continuing to recruit to this culture. And we're not going to bring this guy in, regardless of how talented he is, if we don't think he's going to fit into this, what we've built here. Like, their whole, catchphrase, "It's not about me." Like, that is a daily thing that is lived out. Like, that is not just talk. That is something that they believe in. And they've done a really good job with Chaz Lanier, with Dalton Connect, some guys in the past where they've hit on where these guys have come in and been quickly adopted into the team. It's a little bit different now because you're losing 4-year guys like Jemai and Zakai. But they've done a good job recruiting to a culture to keep that chemistry intact.
And there's 6 open spots right now, like if nobody leaves, right? 6?
Don't make me do math on the spot. Well, there's 6 open spots. There were 2 to begin with, so that would be 8. And then you have 2 signed, so that's back down to 6. Then you took the Troy Henderson commit, so that's down to 5. And then you also got to throw in the fact that maybe scholarships are going to 15, the counts to 13 next year, which could mean no walk-ons. I think that will mean no walk-ons for anybody across the country. They'll all be scholarship guys. So a little bit of a different roster math, but they have plenty of spots to fill.
Gotcha. The ADaug for baseball, is there any downside to recruiting the kids who are locks to get drafted super early and never make it to campus? I mean, I don't want to say there's no such thing as a log, because there are 2 guys, that Tennessee's not going to get to campus for sure in this class. But no, there's no downside, because you never know what's going to happen. There can be an injury there. There can be, your stock can slide. Your the money might not be where you want it to be, or where your agent or where your family wants it to be. I mean, there's so many things that can happen. So you go and you recruit and you sign these guys, and if they go to the draft, they go to the draft. If not. And like, now it's so competitive. I mean, Tony spoke on this a couple of times already this year, that he felt like this last draft cycle is the first time that they won the draft cycle, meaning come to Tennessee, develop, improve your stock. Name, image, and likeness has changed the game. And you got players like Levi Clark here, Jay Abernathy, Anson Siebert is not pitching right now, but I mean, he's a great example, right? I mean, he was going to the draft until he showed up on campus. Like, he was always going to the draft, but something happened to him and some certain situations changed, and now he's here. So, no, there's no downside. Go recruit, go sign the best players, let the chips fall where they may, and even the ones you get to campus that don't pursue professional careers right out of high school, they're still pretty good players for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with NIL in a lot of sports, and we saw this week in the women's game, right? That the girl from Notre Dame is going to stay in school. She'll make more money at Notre Dame than she will in her WNBA salary. If you're a baseball player and you're thinking about college versus the pro game, low A ball on a bus, rookie ball on a bus with no meals, no nutrition bar, no strength coach, or go to college, have some NIL money, have room and board, have a strength coach, have a nutritionist, have a plan for development. It's always before it was, cash versus no cash. And that's just not the world we're living in now. I think the college game for draft prospects is more attractive than it's ever been. It's not always going to be enough to negate somebody from going straight to the pros. But at the same time, too, Eric, I think there's enough out there that it's a lot more appealing now to at least explore that option than it once was.
Yeah, no doubt. And especially when you take into account a program like Tennessee that is absolute top notch. I mean, the strength conditioning program with Q, phenomenal. I mean, the results speak for themselves. I mean, they continuously praise the nutrition, the nutrition plan these guys are on. I remember I did a story last year on the home runs, and I talked with Q, and he has a different plan for every single person. So I mean, yeah, like especially when you take all that into consideration, and then you take Tennessee into consideration, there are so many pros to come into college for a couple of years, and a lot of these guys are 2 years too. I mean, like Dean Curley's going to be drafted in the top 10. He's a 2-year guy. Mandy Marin's a 2-year guy. There's a couple others as well. So sometimes you don't have to wait too long if you want to come to school to begin with. Let's go to Gaterdawg with the 2 portal O-line guards getting great reviews. Are the high school recruits from the last few classes getting impatient? Sure.
I mean, go earn it. Go win it. That's what you're competing for. I mean, and it's on them. Go be the best guard. I mean, go be, we're going to put your best 5 on the field. Okay. Maybe that's Pendleton at center, maybe that's in Jesse Perry's at guard, or maybe Jesse Perry ends up being better than those. I mean, you just go compete every day, or you look for someplace else to play. That's the world you're in. And I'm sure those guys are looking around at 2 transfers coming in. But as Glenn Ellerby said last Saturday when he met the media, we had exit meetings last December, and I was transparent with every one of them. We're going to get inside help in the transfer portal. So it's on you to make us, to add depth, and maybe we don't need help moving forward, but we're going to get help right now because we need help next year, at the inside guard positions, and they went and got 2 guys. So that's just the world. That's just the life of college athletics, man. That's just what you're dealing with right now, and all sports, really, when you think about it.
JBGee, in your opinion, what do you think would be the biggest help to get the Vols over the hump to get to the Final Four? Do they need to recruit better? Do they need to be more focused on offense than defense? Do they need a deeper roster in case of injury, more NIL money, all the above? Grant, what say you?
This isn't going to be a popular response because the offense wasn't that bad this year. I know that they looked 1 for whatever 15 from 3 in the first half and scored 15 points against Houston. It's crazy to say that, but they were 17th in KenPom offense, and their offensive rating on their points per 100 possessions was, I think, the second highest in KenPom history for a Tennessee basketball team. And the other one was the 2018-19 team that was ranked number 3 in offense. So they weren't that bad offensively. It seemed like they kept getting better offensively as the season went on. They just had a really, really bad half of basketball against a really good Houston defense. I think talent could be better, obviously, always. I think some of the teams they've went up against, Florida had more talent, Houston had more talent. Like there is a little bit of a talent gap there. I think Rick does less with more, but I don't think does more with less, I should say, but he doesn't have to go that route. I think they could recruit better. I think they could add more talent. I think you going in shorthanded hurt you this year, although ironically Cam Carr would have played a role in this team down the stretch had he stayed around, because Igor was struggling at times, and Darlin Stone was never much of a factor with this team. But I think recruiting better would be the start, and just try to close that talent gap a little bit. They haven't failed at recruiting. They've obviously got enough talent on the floor, and they found guys that win basketball games and play the way they wanted to play, but you could always recruit better.
Grant, you think inside offensive presence,
Yeah.
I mean, floor balance from an offensive standpoint, I'm not saying that's cost them the last 2 years a trip to the Final Four. I don't think that's fair to say. But when you watch teams play, particularly this team, last year was different because you could clear out for Dalton and he could figure out a way to score or get to the free throw line or whatever. They just didn't have that with this team. And I don't know if that's an inside player or just in the portal. You got to go get score. You got to have somebody that you can say, hey, go get me a bucket. They didn't have, I mean, Jordan Gainey was the closest go get me a bucket guy that they had where you could give him the ball and he could create something.
Right. And Sunday, and the Elite Eight was a good example because the big guy in the post, his name escapes me, Juwan, it seemed like he could get a bucket anytime he wanted to get a bucket. He was lowering his shoulder into people. Emmanuel Sharp was going to hit a shot when Emmanuel Sharp needed to hit a shot. LJ Cryer is one of the best guards in college basketball. He's going to make a lot of shots. Milos Uzan, another guy that was going to make a lot. It felt like just Houston had so many answers, like so many different spots on the floor, like they could go get it. Whereas Tennessee, if it's not a lob for Felix, really, what are you going to get out of Felix offensively, that kind of thing. So yeah, you gotta get to that point where you just have answers all over the floor. And I love Jordan Gainey's game and Chaz, what he did, and Zakai and Jemai, even some offensively too, to go with what he did defensively. So Tennessee had a lot of answers. They just couldn't match the number of answers that like a Houston has.
BravesVol. Has Bargo had any practice time lately working at catcher? With the struggles at the plate, it seems strange not to try him in these midweek games. I know catcher is mostly a defensive position, but our catchers aren't really giving us anything at the plate. If Bargo is decent defensively, I feel like it's worth a shot. How quickly we forget, man. Cannon Peebles, little 2-run home run in the 9th inning, game 2 last weekend. Nah, I understand the question for sure. To your point, like I'd have no issue with Bargo working there in the midweeks, but since he's not done that, I don't see that being a thing. Like in 23, they played around with putting Jared Dickey back there for a little bit, but different circumstances. Remember, Tennessee started 5-10 in conference play that year, and so they were just trying anything to spark something. I mean, this team is 8-1 in conference play, number 1 team in the country, 27-2. To your point, or to the poster's point, Tony has said repeatedly, it's kind of like Ariel at shortstop right now. Like, those are 2 positions where it's all defense. Whatever you get offensively is just a bonus. And Tennessee's been spoiled to get a lot of offense from the shortstop position. And at times last year with Cal, at least with the home run ball, some offense behind the plate. So I would throw him back there in some midweeks, to your point, a little bit, but he hasn't done that yet. His best position is not behind the plate. It's at third base or corner infield. So until I see him back there behind the plate, I don't think that's really something they're going to be playing around with right now moving forward. Whatever you're doing with Dalton Bargo, just keep doing it because he's your best hitter in SEC play. He's been phenomenal. Let's go to Rocky Top Mock. Barnes has had some great point guards throughout his coaching career, with Zakai Ziegler being right up there at the top. However, if Barnes could go to his basketball laboratory, like the pitching lab, the basketball laboratory, and create the perfect point guard, what would be some of the critical traits and characteristics he would emphasize?
Excuse me, Zakai Ziegler, mentality, DNA, all that stuff that Rick's talked about for 4 years now. That would be a huge part of it. I'm sure there would be a lot of TJ Ford in that point guard. Size-wise, it would have that point guard would have more size than maybe a TJ Ford or a Zakai Ziegler. But Zakai, it's going to be hard to ever get Rick to admit that he wants anything other than Zakai at point guard because of how glowingly he's talked about Zakai for the last 4 years. So that would be a huge part of it. TJ Ford is obviously a huge one for him as well. So, offensively, defensively, you want a two-way guard. That's what Zakai was. It would start and end with Zakai and a lot of that DNA. Taller
version of Zakai Ziegler.
Yeah.
That's where my answer would be. All the rest of it. If Zakai Ziegler was, what, Grant, 4 inches taller, he's the perfect point guard.
Right.
In the lab. For Rick Barnes,
yeah.
To me, that's what it is.
That speed and that quickness. Jordan Bone had it too. I think he's a very underrated point guard in Tennessee basketball history. I think you saw that speed and that quickness with Zakai. That would be a big deal. Shot making, assist guy like Zakai was for 4 years. That's all the stuff you need at point guard.
Let's go to Flyfish 21. Who has a second-year leap in football not named Boo Carter?
Meaning a sophomore, you think is what he means there?
I would take it. He used Boo as reference. I would say sophomore or just a second year in the system guy.
Okay, second year in the system guy. I think Edwin Spillman, is going to have to be a huge factor for them at linebacker. He should certainly be better. Jackson Moy at defensive tackle, I think would fit that bill when you look at what they're talking about there.
It better be Chris Brazel.
It better be, it better be Mike Matthews, Chris Brazel. It better be Braylon Staley. It better be a combination of those guys. You better have some second year wide receivers, make a leap, because you need so much help there for sure.
Another question here from Flyfish21. Does Dewayne Brown contribute next year at all? He's already heavier than any of the bigs right now.
It's hard for me to see it as the roster stands today because you're going to be getting Felix back, you're going to be getting JP Estrella back, you're going to be getting Cade Phillips back. Those are your three guys in the post. Felix and Cade obviously split time all year. There probably could be a small role for him, I would imagine, just based on his size and the like the poster's talking about, the body that he possesses on day one on campus. Sure, but as the roster stands now, all these guys scheduled to return, that's where the majority of the minutes are going to go to.
We'll go to BlaytonK. What's the overall impressions from the scrimmage Monday, and how did the team look compared to the previous teams since Coach Josh Heupel took over? I guess he means there at the end, like at this stage in spring.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, this is a very different team. This has as many questions as probably Josh Heupel's first team has in terms of who's going to play where, but they're better answers from a talent standpoint. They're young. They're pretty beat up right now, so it's not a great sample size because of what they're without, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I think right now spring is about individuals, and I think there's some individuals that you liked all the feedback you heard was good. I think Nico performed well. I think Jake Merklinger is a guy who's really gotten better. He's not going to beat out Nico, but I think you feel better about your backup quarterback situation with him. He had a really nice scrimmage by all accounts on Monday night. I think Radarius Jackson's kind of a little bit overshadowed because of the Travis Smith love right now. And I think Smith's a good player, but I think Radarius Jackson's done a good job to this point. Where those young, where's some of the young defensive linemen? Where's a Weathersby? Where's some of those guys coming from? I think Weathersby's flashed a little bit. They got to get Jordan Ross healthy. I think those young freshman tight ends did an okay job. Ethan Davis made a couple of plays. How do you compare them? They're more talented, but they've got as many questions as they probably had in year one, when year one was a complete and utter unknown. But if you're talking about replacing 4 starters on the offensive line, your edge rusher, you're banged up in the secondary right now. Your best corner's out, your best linebackers out right now. So this team's got to get people well. I mean, you were much more settled a year ago with this team at this point in terms of who was going to play where. You were looking for one offensive lineman, if that. You knew who your running back was. You knew who your quarterback was. You knew your receivers coming back. You knew who your tight ends were going to be. You knew you were deep on the defensive line. You just had a lot more answers across the board last year than you have right now this year. Doesn't mean they're not. Doesn't mean they don't have the answers. They're just not settled at this point right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to phrase it. And you said it before, they're a lot more talented than where they were in 2021, but there's still just as many questions because you're having to replace so many positions and former starters. Iheartvols, 1 for 15 from 3 in the first half is what everyone will remember, but in my opinion, an equally telling stat was only 1 foul committed. Were you surprised that we were not the more physical team on defense, seeing that the refs were letting both teams play?
I thought 1 foul committed was more about how much the refs were letting the teams play, opposed to Tennessee wasn't physical on defense. I think Igor struggled defensively in that game and got driven by a couple times, but it felt like every time Juwan Roberts was putting a shoulder into somebody, it was Cade Phillips or Felix Akpara that were standing there trying to withstand that. The stuff on the perimeter, it felt like it was pretty good defense. It was a lot of good shot making by Houston. I mean, it was in the paint too with some hooks and just floaters and kind of shot put stuff in the lane that they hit early on and kind of kept hitting. And then the second half, it just felt like every time they needed a big shot, they got a big shot and they made it. And I just didn't take away from that game that Tennessee really struggled that much defensively. I thought it was more good offense beats good defense.
We will go to Hoover_Vol. You see college football Power 4 head coaches make jumps to the NFL or step down to coordinating positions, seemingly due to roster management. Is the reason we haven't seen that kind of activity in college basketball just due to the sheer roster size difference between college football and college basketball?
I would guess so. If anything, it's going the other way in college basketball, where Florida State had an opening with Leonard Hamilton. They hired a guy, I can't remember his name now, it escapes me, from the Sacramento Kings staff, pretty young guy that had played at Florida State. And there are other guys from NBA staffs that are getting head coaching jobs in college basketball, probably because of the just the way it's more of a pro model a little bit now in terms of paying guys and trying to figure out how to maximize skill and talent and stuff on your roster while spending X amount of dollars. I think it's, if anything, it's going the other way. But to the poster's question, the original point, I think that would be the difference in terms of what the roster size is in college football versus what the roster size is in the NFL, and how many additional guys you have to deal with, and just what kind of job it is through the year versus what you're dealing with in the league.
Grant, I mean, I feel like it's, if you want to be in the game, the college game is not necessarily scaring you off. I think it's the people that are leaving the college game they just don't want to deal with the pro aspect of it. Whereas in football, I think coaches are interested in making some NFL moves because the calendar is so different. With the transfer portal, the calendar in college basketball is probably getting a little bit lighter in terms of some of your summertime work. I think the football thing is much more about your personal time and the calendar, as opposed to the way the game has changed is running everybody out from a roster management standpoint. Maybe that's not fair to say, but that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not in it, you're not in it. And we've seen Roy Williams get out of it. And we've seen, other coaches, big name coaches, Coach K, other guys that have stepped away from the game in recent years since everything started to change. And I think that's one thing that's kind of kept Rick around, is how much he enjoys the portal process of it. I mean, you're condensing a recruitment that for a senior in high school might last 3 years. For a portal kid, that might last 3 weeks at most. That's a long recruitment in the portal cycle. And you're basically every April's free agency, and you're just trying to rebuild your roster and trying to plug holes and make yourself better for the next season. So I think it's, if you want to be here, if you want to be involved in it, you got to adapt to it. I think Rick has adapted to it well, and the guys that didn't want to adapt to it, obviously you've seen them walk away.
And I think the NBA game is hard for a college coach because they're so hands-on in a development deal, and the whole management of a pro athlete at the NBA level is so very different. They're agenting them. We need a day rest on this West Coast trip. We're gonna travel separately. It just feels like in the NBA that the player has all the control of everything. And if you're a college coach and you spent your career as a college coach, that is the furthest thing from what you are about in the game of basketball. And right. So I think it's hard for a college coach to go to the NBA. I think that's why you've not seen many people do that. I know the Lakers made a run at Hurley, which I think would have been just a disaster in Los Angeles for him to try to manage. Tim Floyd didn't work out when he went to the Bulls. I mean, there hasn't been a ton. I mean, Billy Donovan, what's the judgment on him as an NBA coach?
I think Bulls fans are tired of him. I think I've asked Rick about it years ago about the NBA, and the one thing he told me is, if you're going to coach in the NBA, you better be okay with getting fired, because you're going to get fired, and it's going to happen a lot, and you're just going to be moving. I mean, the Grizzlies fired their coach last week, and they're a playoff team. Like, maybe there was a lot going into it that I'm not aware of, and I'm not a Grizzlies fan myself, so I don't follow that stuff. But just the fact that you're sitting here in April firing your coach, and you're slated to make the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the kind of the world you live in.
Let's go to David Keith fan. When can we anticipate an announcement on Mike Keith's booth partner for next year? Basketball, any guesses?
I don't know anything about basketball in terms of a timeline. I don't think there's necessarily a big rush there to do anything. I do think you'll hear something on what the football broadcast team looks like sooner rather than later. Obviously, the orange and white game is coming up. They've not announced what that broadcast team is going to be and how that's going to go about, but I do think you're gonna hear an answer on the football side of things in pretty short order. Basketball, I think, is going to be a little bit longer before that's ever released or ever announced and ever finalized.
I want to go back to Hoovervoll. I skipped over one of his questions. With the recent NCAA settlement in regards to Rev Share, the general consensus is that the Big East is positioned to really capitalize on this due to not having football programs. What are your thoughts? Do you think the Big East will quickly turn into a powerhouse conference like it used to be?
I mean, Grant, here's the thing, and this is an interesting deal. If you're going to do Rev Share, and the Rev Share number is $20 million, and you don't have football, where are you spending your money? Where's St. John's going to spend their money? Where's Villanova going to spend their money? where are the Creightons of the world, and I know they're not the Big East, I don't guess, but where are those teams going to spend their money? If their money is going to be into football or into basketball, they should have the biggest budgets, of anybody in terms of Rev Share budgets for their college basketball teams, because they're not participating in the football side of things. Whereas I think the ACC, the SEC, we'll see what the Big 12 does, but particularly the ACC and the SEC, I think they're going to have a formula for the Rev Share split. Not going to tell you who to go get, but X amount of number goes to football, or X percentage of your Rev Share goes to football, X percentage goes to basketball, then other sports and that type of thing. You can't make that same percentage split in the Big East if your teams don't have football. So to me, on the onset, that looks like it would be a big advantage. We'll see how all this plays out. We still got a long ways to go, I think, to get through the House settlement and all that stuff.
I mean, here's where I'm uneducated on this. Like, it's still valuable to have an SEC football program and the amount of money that SEC contract brings in, right? Because you're going to have. I mean, is all that money? That money's, I don't know. It's got to go somewhere. Like, obviously, you're obviously budgeting for an entire football roster, and that's a huge chunk of that. But I don't know. It feels like the SEC and these other power conferences aren't just going to get left behind. Like, they're going to find a way to adapt. They're going to find a way to compete at a similar level as a Big East with football or without football.
Which college basketball coach or baseball coach is going to be the first one to publicly be upset, publicly comment on the low percentage they're getting in terms of football?
I think I don't know if Mark Pope will do it publicly, but I think Kentucky people are kind of worried about what that I mean, what does that split look like for them? No offense to Mark Stoops, but what does that look like now?
Think about a place like Duke, John Shire.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, there's a great story that was out on Duke on Monday. I mean, Duke's got a collective that you can donate to, and none of your money goes to basketball because they've got their own private collective. They call it, somebody in the article called it dark money, but they've just got, they've got their 6 or 8 donors that are funding basketball for them, and they're not really interested in any of the rest of it. Rev Share, they got their own system going on over there, with that part of it. But now North Carolina's different because your football commitment in North Carolina is very different. I mean, you're not going to give Bill Belichick some money to put a roster together. Their balance is going to be kind of different. Whereas I think Duke's situation is, look, y'all do whatever you want to do. We'll take care of basketball. And if you've ever been on Duke's campus, it's very clear that that's the mentality. There's one modern building on that campus, and it's the Duke Basketball Hall of Fame tied into Cameron Indoor with their, tunnel over to the practice facility, which has got like 4 courts in it or whatever. I mean, like, that's their training facility, and it's vastly different than anything else on that campus athletically.
They did put a lot of money into football, I want to say about 6-7 years ago. But to your point, I mean, you
can still drive your car to the parking lot and sit in the car and look over the stadium, I think, in the one end zone. Maybe they fixed that, but you used to be able to just drive your car up and look down over the end zone and just sit and watch from the car hood if you wanted to. So they have put money into it. It has gotten better. David Cutcliffe raised a lot of money over there for that, but you walk through any of their facilities and one has like, and it's the basketball world.
Yeah, no doubt. Football Fanatic 09, is Gainey the most underappreciated Vol? In my opinion, he definitely is. He was one of the one guys you can give the ball to create his own offense. I really feel he ran the point very well. Seems like an overlooked star of the team.
He was 1,000% an overlooked star of the team and underappreciated, because you think about what he was when he got here. He was a kid that shot like 50% from 3 as a freshman at USC Upstate.
Hey, Grant, why was he on scholarship? I'm just wondering.
His numbers went down. That's a good throwback. His numbers went down a little bit his sophomore year at Upstate, and then he comes here, and everybody's just thinking he's just a guy that they're adding because he's the coach's kid, the associate head coach's kid, all that stuff. But, man, the progress he made in his game from the day he stepped on campus until that Houston game, what he was able to do. I mean, he was a point guard who took care of the basketball when he had to be. He was a 3-level scorer. He was a very clutch 3-level scorer. You think about that shot at Illinois to win the game. You think about that 3-point play at Alabama at halftime, a very similar situation where they don't win that game if Jordan Gainey doesn't make that play right before the half. Watching him work in the mid range and the way he could score it there, and just the number of big shots he hit on the perimeter. If not for Chaz, if not for Dalton, he would be much more in the spotlight and appreciated. He was just that sixth man that every college basketball team needs.
Perfect example of go get a multi-year transfer.
Yes. Don't be afraid of a guy that you can stash and develop and have somebody sitting there ready to go.
JW Hensley 92. Is there even a slight chance at this point of Zakai Ziegler or Jemai Mashack returning for one final season? My understanding was no, but I've heard conflicting information on it, hoping you guys can clarify.
I mean, their reaction to the Houston loss told me that they don't think they're going to have a fifth year or a shot at a fifth year because of how emotional they were after that game. It looked like they were done. There's people on the internet that are, found an April 7 date, and they think that's going to be the date that it's resolved and put into effect and all. I don't know about that. I don't think that's going to happen that quickly. I don't think it's going to move that fast. And you can't sit around and wait on, do we go get Jacoby Gillespie, or are we going to wait and let Zakai Ziegler figure out something from the NCAA, who notoriously moves slow? You got to fill out your roster spots right now. You got to fill your roster for the next season. You can't really hesitate on that. So it'd be great if they could, but it just feels like a ultra long shot.
And if this happens, it could be a situation where it's next year's seniors, to where
right.
You're sitting around and you're in a position like Alberto Ozuna potentially, and of course you don't want to be in that position.
Right.
Well, and here's the thing about the date, the April date. The NCAA has said, from everything I've read and everybody I've talked to, that they were never going to consider the 5-year or any eligibility questions, issues, or discussions or proposals until after the House settlement. Okay, the April 7th date is the start of the House settlement. That's where you think you're going to get a House settlement. Now, we'll see if it's completely done on April 7th, or if there's going to be counters to it. There's going to be litigations off of the settlement. There's going to be appeals to the settlement. We'll see what that's going to happen. But nothing is even in thought of discussion for a vote or moving forward with any of that until after the House settlement is reached, which will be at the earliest next week. So that date doesn't mean the settlement doesn't determine eligibility. All the NCAA has said is we're not going to discuss eligibility till the House settlement's done, because we don't want to get sued based on making an eligibility decision before the House settlement. So that also affects your timeline. That's why I don't think they're going to do anything that fast.
I asked somebody on the Tennessee staff probably in February, so 6-8 weeks ago, however long ago that was, like, do y'all think this could happen? Like, these guys would be all, the perfect examples of guys who could come back and it would be huge for a basketball team. And the reaction was basically, we don't even know if it's going to affect next season's seniors. Like, they think it might take that long to get this whole thing worked out. Like, it could go way too long down the line. I don't think it's going to move nearly fast enough to affect this class.
Agreed.
DavyVol 5, was JP Estrella the missing offensive piece in the post? How big of a loss do you think, or do you feel that he was?
He was a big piece for sure, because you go back and look at him as a prospect coming out of high school. It was a lot about his offensive game and what he could do. He could step out and shoot it, and he was going to be a guy that gave you some offense. I think what you saw from him in that Elite Eight game against Purdue, when he was physically battling Zach Edey, which is a nearly impossible task in college basketball, but was very impressive. And just, it would have eased the Felix load a little bit. It would have eased the Cade Phillips role a little bit. It might have changed Igor Milchic's role a little bit. So, yeah, I think that was a huge piece that they were missing. It should be a huge piece that they're getting back.
Here is a Brent Hubbs question. Are you ready? Is the upper north and the end zone bathroom, the breezeway, getting any work done with the Neyland project? The bathroom situation is bad for that end.
I asked around to answer this question when you let me know what questions were going to be on this podcast today, and I was told that nothing new there this off season. They added bathrooms a year ago in the north end zone and that north end zone upper there, and aside from those bathrooms, there's nothing at this point in time being done. The work in Neyland Stadium this year is completion of the south end zone and the founder suites. And that's what this off-season project is for Neyland Stadium in this off-season. Elevator shafts are in place at the bottom of Peyton Manning Pass there for the founder suites. And they're obviously finishing up there in the south end zone, which does include new restrooms there. They did put those new restrooms in the north end, but there's no renovations to anything currently up there right now.
VolumeShooter. What's the most encouraging thing and the most disappointing thing that you've seen or heard throughout spring practice so far? It could be anything from an entire position group just killing it, or to them underperforming, or the fact that so many guys are banged up and not getting out on the practice field. A wide open question.
I think the most disappointing thing for me is you got a bunch of guys hurt. You're down a bunch of guys on defense, and I think that's the most disappointing thing. Is Josh Heupel was asked about his defense on Monday night, and he was not in any way trying to be critical of him, but his answer was like, well, we ran around and we ran hard to the ball. But like, there's such an incomplete project right now that it's really about individuals with them, because you're down in numbers at defensive tackle. You're down in numbers at linebacker. Your young linebackers aren't getting any work. You're obviously banged up with Jermod McCoy. I think it's a lot more about individuals on the defensive side of the ball than maybe it was this time last spring. So I think that's the one thing that jumps out. From an encouraging standpoint, I think you feel better about your potential for playmakers on offense. What's that, Grant?
His real answer is the most disappointing thing is he's not seen my face at a single spring practice.
Well,
maybe the most encouraging part.
No, I would love to see you. It's never encouraging when I don't see you. My greatest disappointment is I don't get to see enough of practice to really know. You got to talk to a bunch of people. Let me watch a scrimmage, and then I'll formulate my own opinions. But that's not going to happen. I do think the most encouraging thing, and again, it's early, is some guys at receiver have made some plays. DeJuan Morris, I think, has shown up some. Deshaun Bishop is. You feel a little better about where you are playmaker-wise, I guess, right now. Now, you didn't feel bad about him last year, but I do think you're more athletic there, Eric, and you can see that by watching practice. I mean, they feel more athletic at the receiver spot.
How about William Inge dropping an Al Wilson reference today when you asked about Jordan Burns? You can't throw that name around there.
Come on, we're not doing that. Come on now. I mean, listen, that's not. I love me some William Inge. I love the positivity. I think that's all great, but
there's only one Al Wilson.
Yeah, we need to stop with that one.
All I gotta say is Power T Nation, baby. Power T Nation.
We got to stop with the Al Wilson comparison. That's 2 years in a row, by the way. He dropped an Al Wilson. He dropped an Al Wilson comparison last year when he talked about how Edwin Spillman flew around to the football when Spillman had been on campus a hot minute and was going through spring practice, just hitting anything in front of him. And then we dropped another one today. I mean, there's only 127 that comes through. I may be a little biased there, but that cat's different. I've not seen one of those come back through here from a leadership standpoint and a mentality standpoint the way they got played.
It's like there's only one Paul Fortenberry. All right, no, me and Matt. I mean, Ben. None of us can try to do replicate what Paul meant to the staff. So
it's like when you're a kid, and your parents tell you money doesn't grow on trees. Like Coach Al Wilson's not on trees back there.
I mean, we're just no. I mean, there are only a handful of people that I've covered in 30 years that you say that's kind of a unicorn, right? Like that's a different guy. I mean, what are we going to have in basketball this year? What's everybody going to say when the next transfer comes in? I mean, Grant, how does he compare to Dalton Connect? The whole Chaz Lanier thing all year. Was he? I mean, how does he compare to Dalton Connect? There are a few of those that you have, and you just don't replicate that. I don't know that we'll see another Dalton Connect roll through here anytime soon.
You won't.
No,
is this the next Sakai Ziegler? Has he found his next Sakai?
And I get it. That's what fans are supposed to do. They're looking for that. Coaches shouldn't create those expectations, particularly a coach who's, other than watch some highlights, has never been involved in Al Wilson, doesn't know anything about Al Wilson other than a random hello. And I'm not being critical of William Inge. That's just, we need to stop some of those things. Everybody's not great all the time.
I love the rants. That's what makes this show so great.
I'm just saying, like, it's not fair to Jordan Burns,
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Let's don't do that to him.
Lfvol, the GQ recruiting. Here's that recruiting question, Brent. The GQ recruiting update following the weekend visits raised the issue of the defensive backboard and possible expansion or circling back. Banks has a track record, but given our losses to top cornerback talent after 2025, what do you see as our outlook attracting much-needed elite guys to this point?
Well, those guys are obviously going to be really expensive. I mean, high school kids are, there's a lot of NIL money there. I think you're seeing them broaden their board. I mean, they just offered the kid from Greenville on Monday night. So I think you're seeing the broad board there. I think the other thing, too, is this is, I mean, of all the positions, really, when you think about it, let's take Hendon Hooker out of the equation. When you look at transfers, they've had as much success at the defensive back position probably as anywhere, right? I mean, you got Turrentine's a starter. That's a transfer. You've got Jalen McMurray, who's a factor, going to play and has played a bunch. He's a transfer. Jamal McCoy is obviously a transfer. So I think they've done a pretty good job with some of the transfer portal stuff. So, I don't think you do anything crazy. I think you go recruit the people that you like. You swing for the fences on some guys. If you come up short, you start looking in the portal for guys, because nobody's keeping 13, 14 defensive backs on the roster, Grant, because you're not keeping them happy. And you're only playing 6 to 8 guys. So you're really just trying to keep a starting group and maybe a couple of others. And then those guys are rotating through. I mean, they're transfer portaling it like crazy around the country. So I think that's a position where there's always going to be guys available in the portal.
Such a fun world to live in if you're a college football coach, I'm sure. Trying to balance all of that.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, you got some young guys that you like. I mean, where's Trey Poteet a year from now? This poster's talking about down the road. And what does he look like? What does Dylan Lewis look like? Right, Eric? I mean, where's Redmond? I mean, they brought in some guys that they like. The question is, can you play them enough to keep them engaged and to keep them involved and to get them ready to go in year 2, that they take it and run with it? I mean, I think that's always your challenge. That's why the game of college football is getting younger by the year, because you better play them. If not, they're gone.
It goes back to that interior offensive line question earlier.
Yeah. I mean,
same situation where are these guys getting frustrated? Are these guys getting impatient? Well, probably.
Hey, and to Tennessee's credit, man, I mean, think about it. Your rotation at safety when they were healthy, when Christian Charles was healthy, was 4. Jalen McMurray backed up both corners, so you played 3, and you played 2 stars. So, I mean, like, for the first time in what feels like the entire time they've been here.
It's the best thing they did a year ago, is they played a lot of people and kept a lot of people engaged. Mm-hmm. And as a result, you didn't have a big, heavy turnover of a bunch of guys leaving. You got to keep them engaged. I mean, kind of the exception to all this to me, and it's the biggest credit that I think he doesn't get any credit for, is how in the world, and I won't use any other language than that, is Tony Vitello keeping all these guys happy who could be playing in a lot of places. And I know he rotates his lineup, but I mean, here's Christian Moore. He's waited his turn, right? Blake Burke's waited his turn. This guy's waiting his turn. Here's this guy waiting his turn now. Like, it's pretty remarkable to me that he's kept everybody intact the way he has with his roster. I know that's not even remotely the question, but if there's a poster child for holding the roster together, that guy's figured it out.
Yeah.
Hey, we're good. Let's go get more good. Let's go get some. Let's go get some more guys. I need more, and the roster's expanding based on the rules, so you're going to be able to add even more guys, which makes it a challenge to keep everybody happy, right?
It's wild, man, and like when they went and got Alberto in the preseason, I remember asking somebody over there, like, how are the guys? Meaning, like, how's the Bargos, how's the Clarks, how's the Newstroms, how the Hunter Highs who have been repping at first base, and he's like, I mean, they're about what you'd expect, right? And I was like, okay, you good? All right, you better turn things around, because we're going with you or without you, and it's just that mindset across the board. So
it's crazy, and
it's
a lot of guys have stayed. I mean, it's to their credit, their culture is obviously very good, because a lot of guys have stayed.
Smokey Man 15, closing out the basketball season. Scott Ziegler, Jemai Mashack specifically referenced adversity faced this season in a way that's seen outside of normal team sport adversity. Care to shed any light on what they meant? Estrella, Carr, something else? I gotta imagine Carr was probably one of the things they were referencing, right?
Yeah, I would say JP Estrella being lost in November to foot surgery was a big deal. Cam Carr leaving December 23rd.
But I mean, like injuries happen sometimes. Like,
right.
They were number 1, right? Were they number 1 of the team? Like, Carr just quit.
Right, they were. That was during that 14-0 start and all that stuff. Outside of that, no, I don't think there was any internal strife or anything. Justin Gainey said last week, I think it was, that this was one of the most well-connected teams that he's ever been around. Shorthanded might be kind of adversity because they had basically 9 scholarship guys, and Bishop Boswell wasn't going to play very much, and Darlin Stone Dubar usually wasn't playing very much. It was really 7 guys in the main rotation. But in terms of just connectedness in this team, that was one of the closest basketball teams I've been around that I've seen. Chaz Lanier when he got here for his visit a year ago, the entire team met him. I think it was in the film room or something on campus at like midnight when he got to town. Like that set the tone for how close this team was and how cohesive this team was. I mean, Chaz Lanier, you never saw him without a smile on his face. Jordan Gainey, the same thing. He was a friend to everybody. Zakai and Jemai kind of set the tone culture-wise and all that stuff, leadership-wise. And no, I don't think there was ever any kind of adversity that you would think you want to keep behind closed doors. I think it was just like a JP Estrella foot injury, a Cam Carr leaving the program, stuff like that.
All right, we got 4 more questions, 2 basketball, 2 I said baseball, 2 football. JBVol 98, any guess on who the home and home opponent will be, Brent Hubbs?
No, I don't. My guess is it's going to be somebody in the region. Would be my guess. Somebody in more of the southeastern region. Obviously not an SEC team, but maybe an ACC team. Somebody like that. I don't think this is going to be, going to the West Coast or the Northeast or anything like that. But we'll see. I think they're getting closer to getting something done.
DavyVol, have the coaching staff's transfer portal once after the spring changed any since spring practices started? Still looking to take a wide receiver, corner, defensive tackle. Brent, do we know yet, or do we know enough yet?
For me, it's defensive tackle.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's changed or it's always there. Maybe it's a little more important. I don't know where Jamal Wallace is. He hasn't practiced all spring. I don't know what his long-term status is. Nathan Robinson's a great-looking frame who can't stay healthy.
Yeah,
has been unable to stay healthy. So now you got 3 tackles and then 2 freshmen. I think if you're going to rotate 4 or 5 with those freshmen being kind of the 5th guys, you would like to go find a veteran defensive tackle to help you. I think that is kind of moving up the priority list over where you are with some of the other positions right now.
And one of those freshmen we're referencing, Ethan Utley, has got to gain some weight.
Oh, no question.
Or he's going to get thrown around.
Yeah, physically he's got to get much bigger.
Yeah. Last basketball question, actually. Just 2 paragraphs. Vol from Virginia. Purely hypothetical and speculative. These are my favorite ones. But do you all think the team would have played differently had they played an SEC opponent? Florida, Alabama, Auburn with the Final Four on the line versus a non-SEC opponent? Or do you think the opponent wouldn't have mattered? He said, I thought about this scenario the past couple of days and wonder if playing an SEC foe would have shifted some of the pressure away from making the Final Four and more towards beating a rival. This team seems to play a lot better, more focused, when facing a team with something to prove, Auburn, Kentucky, etc.
I think so. Just from a familiar standpoint, it could have felt more like a Tuesday night in January than an Elite Eight on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, Houston is a really, really good basketball team. The last 10 years, I think it is on KenPom, they are the 2nd highest rated team in KenPom the last 10 years total. And the only one above them is Duke. And Auburn and Florida are also on that list, closer to the bottom. So, I mean, you saw the way they played Auburn in the SEC tournament semifinals. You saw the way they played Florida. I mean, they battled a really, really good Florida team that couldn't have been playing much better for 30, 35 minutes before Florida kind of took over. Yeah, I think it would have been different. I think it's just you know the opponent better, you know the personnel better, you know what they're trying to do. They know you two the same thing, but it just feels different when it's a little bit more familiar. I mean, look at the Kentucky game in the Sweet 16. Obviously, Kentucky's not as talented as Houston or Florida or an Auburn, but that was the best 40 minutes of basketball we saw from Tennessee all season, the most dominant on both ends of the floor. So I do think it would change things, and I do think there's some tension there and some tightness because – Jemai Mashack missed 3 straight free throws in the first half, and he was one of their best free throw shooters all season, the most comfortable at the line all season, and it looked like he had a hitch in his shot, and something was kind of, I don't know, mind games or whatever, like that stage, trying to get Rick back to a Final Four. Maybe they made that a little bit more than what they should have. Maybe if it was an SEC team, it would have been a little bit more business as usual.
Was it the opening possession or maybe the second possession? Chaz just shot an air ball, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, they weren't just missing shots. They were missing shots badly. It wasn't like they were rimming out. And it felt like every time they missed a shot, Houston went down and just made a bigger shot. And when that's what you don't want as a fan, is being down 15 in the first 8 minutes. Like that just sets the tone for the entire game. And against a Houston team, you're trying to dig out of that hole. That's impossible because of the level of defense they play, the physicality they have, all that stuff that Houston basketball is known for.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you go 1 for 15 from 3, it doesn't matter who your opponent is.
Right,
I think to your point, Grant, probably wouldn't have gone 1 for 15 if you're playing somebody that that you've worked your stuff against and had success against. I'll say this: I had seen Houston play bits and parts of games probably a half dozen times, but I had not really sat down and watched them with the way you watch a Tennessee game and an opponent. Man, I didn't think they were as good as what they were. Like, I thought they were a good basketball team, but I thought they were just a little bit kind of bully ball, and that was it. I mean, they can spray it around a little bit. They're a much better basketball team than I initially thought that they were. And I knew they were good. I'm not saying I thought they were bad, but they are much more complete than I thought they were.
They're better offensively than they have been in the past under Kelvin Sampson, and kind of it's a very similar reputation as Tennessee in terms of physicality and defense. And are they going to have enough offense? Well, they've got LJ Cryer, they've got Uzon, they've got Emmanuel Sharp, they've got guys that are going to make shots. They play very, very slow, but their numbers efficiency-wise on offense are elite because they're going to score it while they play slow. They're not going to waste a lot of possessions. They're going to play well. I mean, they've won 30 of 31, and they've only lost in regulation once this season. Like, they started 4-3, and now they're 34-3. Like, that's what kind of basketball team they are. That's the level that they're playing at right now.
All right, that'll do it here for this Thursday morning Volquest Mailbag Podcast. Appreciate you guys for joining us. A lot of great questions this week. Appreciate that as always for Grant Ramey and Brent Hubbs. I'm Eric Kane. Got so much going on the site right now. Basketball season is over, but obviously a lot of portal updates have been going on this week, so Rob and Grant got you covered there. Football spring practice continuing on. One more week of spring practice, then the orange and white game. So plenty of updates, plus recruits, who's here and who's planning to be here. As my soundproofing panels fall from the wall. Did y'all hear that?
Yeah, I heard that. You got ghosts?
I'm falling apart over here. This new house. I got these soundproofing panels and like.
I thought it was Count Von Delicki. I thought Count Von Delicki was.
No, not a Count Von Delicki reference.
Oh, all right. I'm gonna get off the air here.
Did you get a new fingerprint set?
I did, and I wish my kid could get 3 wishes, and he would not wish for his teacher to be his teacher next year in college or wherever he's at these days.
I'm gonna get Eric's child a jackknife for
well done
for the baby shower.
For Grant, for Brent, come check us out over at Volquest.com. I'm Eric Kane. Thanks for joining us here on the Volquest Mailbag Podcast.